Happy haunted Halloween. The Frankenstein federal government, jolted to direct energy nanobotted artificial life by the post 9/11 Patriot Act and the ghosts of deep state demonocracy, are once again weaving chemtrail webs of spook sabotage and fear-mongering false flags via ghost grifters, high on adrenochrome and baby bodies. Hate us, but fear us, the Machiavellians moan. Watch us as we kill preborns and call it health, rape children and say it's undocumented immigration, celebrate Satanism as artistic expression. Hate us much, but fear us more. But most of all, detest us most. We'll push, poke, prod, and provoke with our pedos, pimps, pushers, and prostitutes in your schools and on your streets and screens until you react and revolt. Then we can finally and overtly do what we long for and do best: repress, repress, repress. Rape born, orphan adopted, blessed bastard, ex-soldier, special agent, spy, tyrant targeted, slave state slandered, turned whistleblower warrior, sabotage sharpened, corruption crucibled, redemption repurposed, maker missioned, as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller to power. Now America's intelligence officer, leading with the last, forging with the first, standing alone together on our tier trail to rescue the Republic and restore America's godliness. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Hey, welcome everybody. Glad to see Nas et al. And give me some of that. You get Ski Girl, regular audience. Good show today. Lots of important things to talk about. Breaking the FBI Conundrum revealed in a new Bomer vid. And this is actually from my paid Substack. But we'll also talk about Trump's cartel and China wins versus FBI CIA control, Trump's threat triage, tragedy or trickery, Secret Service trannies are still serving, and my guest Ira CHALEFF, he missed before, but I guess he's back today, of How to Stop a Tyrant is his book. But first, FBI Conundrum revealed, and again, this is my new Substack. This is a paid Substack, but you're getting it for free right now. Is the FBI ready to run yet another false flag to save itself? So here's the intelligence community controlled AI script on the FBI's latest January 6th pipe bomb release. The FBI has released new surveillance video and information in its ongoing investigation of the individual who placed pipe bombs outside the Democratic National Committee and Republican National Committee headquarters. Yes, that was an equal opportunity bomber, neither side. In Washington, D.C. on January 5th, 2021, the night before the Capitol riot. Of course, the timers were set for only 1 hour. And the FBI doesn't, forensics lab doesn't say they were actually working. They just said they were viable. The updated video includes previous unreleased footage, higher quality clips, and a longer view of the suspect's moments, showing the person sitting on a bench near the DNC headquarters before placing one of the bombs. Suspect, who remains unidentified and at large as of October 23rd, 2025, was wearing a gray hoodie, mask, gloves, and a backpack, believed to have contained one of the devices. New details include an enhanced map of the suspect's route, an estimated height of the feet, and an animation highlighting the specific Nike Air Max Speed Turf shoes the individual was wearing. Wow. Fewer than 25,000 pairs of which were sold between August 2018 and 2021, despite extensive efforts over nearly 4 years, including 1,000 interviews, reviews of approximately 39,000 video files, and assessment of more than 600 tips. The FBI has not conclusively determined the suspect's identity nor even gender. Wow. The pipe bombs were found viable. Doesn't mean they worked. Of course, again, set for 1 hour, but found overnight. And capable of causing serious injury or death if detonated. The FBI is offering an award of $500,000 for information leading to suspects' identification and arrest, which can be submitted via phone or online, because obviously they can't do it. FBI's officials emphasize that public tips have advanced the investigation and express hope that new footage will prompt additional leads. Now, here's the truth. Everybody knows the FBI is behind the January 6th pipe bombs, but the FBI must stick to the script. To investigate the fake bombs would be to reveal itself as the conspirators. This would dismantle the Praetorian Guard deep state by revealing the entire J6 setup, implicating all branches and members of the conspiracy. So they must keep the investigation open while doing nothing to further it. Because an open investigation files are not discoverable, as they would jeopardize prosecution. Are you done laughing yet? So what to do? Well, leak a little bit more video, a little cleaner, and say, look, we are trying to do our best. The other answer, of course, is to run yet another distraction operation, a real bombing, to authenticate the script. That's what came out in Margaret Roberts' blowback book, The Truth About Oklahoma City, which I just had her on recently. But recall the Ruby Ridge fiasco, where ATF murdered Randy Weaver's son, Randy Weaver's former Special Forces, and then the FBI sniper Alon Horiuchi, who I actually knew, murdered his wife while holding their baby. So to solve that fiasco, then they created the Waco op. And because the SAS had recently taken down the Princess Gate Iranian embassy back, they bought a whole bunch of black gear and masks and HK MP5 submachine guns. They only forgot to be trained and rigorously selected, like the real 22nd SAS Pagoda troop are. They didn't even have an op plan. A Delta Force member testified afterwards. They wrote the op plan after. And of course, that was another debacle. And I remember I was at the DEA firearms instructor course at the FBI Quantico as I watched 80 women and children burn up in Waco, remembering all of the genocide of indigenous tribes by the government. But my class of about 25 or 30, I was the only one who was saying that was wrong because there had been federal agents killed as well. But Ruby Ridge begat Waco because they were trying to make themselves heroes. And again, the FBI and ATF just looked worse and killed more people yet again. And then, of course, they came up with Oklahoma City. Why? Because there was a rise of militia at this point against the government terrorism and the government democide. People said, we need militias to defend ourselves against the ATF and the FBI. So they had to make the militia out to look bad. And so that's where Margaret Roberts' latest book came in, Blowback, The Untold Story of the FBI and the Oklahoma City bombing. And of course, in the interview and in the book, it explains that the ATF, the FBI, the CIA, and German intelligence were all in on it. It was a completely run government operation yet again. And so the problem for the FBI, of course, is the younger tech-wise generation on X sees me and other liberty luminaries revealing the truth about all of these government false flags, while their parents and grandparents are still watching and believing Fox and Newsmax as they slowly fade out. That demographic is not coming back. Plus, we've got pretty mainstream guys, like Glenn Beck and Tucker Carlson finally coming around to the truth. And then there are the paltry few elected officials just waiting for the spotlight for another useless congressional investigation. Can't you just see Senator Kennedy grilling pathetic Patel? You mean to tell me y'all missed another one? So what is a corrupted agency to do? Their corruption makes them incompetent. That's one of the major memes, right? Really, really incompetent. Because when you're really, really corrupt, you're really, really incompetent. And they are really, really incompetent. Need an example? How about two? Pathetic Patel and Blathering Bongino. They are the Abbott and Costello of DOJ at this time. Faked conspiracies always end up looking, well, faked. But when all they do is fake, they forget that real law enforcement work cannot be faked. There are simply too many threads. So the main question then is the FBI ready to run yet another false flag to save itself and sacrifice more Americans. It doesn't look like it. Instead, they're desperately trying to breathe life into their pipe bomb fiasco, and that is good news for the innocents who would be mass murdered in their next fracas. So, starting off with a little bit of good news there, and people are catching on to that, and so at least that is my perception there. So remember, the pipe bombs were supposedly found viable, but it is ridiculous. And while they went after anybody who was ever near January 6th and called it an insurrection, pipe bombs, which would be real terrorism, were not examined at all. This was really a diversion, but the insurrection false flag was so successful they didn't need it, but they forgot to pull them. The January 6th committee mentioned the pipe bombs only 5 times in its index, not even in the body of the report. The chairman of the January 6th committee, Benny Thompson, admitted he wasn't privy to a bunch of information about the pipe bombs. He'd never even seen the video of the person planning it and chatted on his cell phone the night before, nor had he seen the lackadaisical way in which the Secret Service treated the discovery of the pipe bombs. Remember, they're just walking by them. The canines don't alert because they're fake. They were put there. And of course, oddly, on the day of the Electoral College count, the Secret Service somehow managed to be right in the middle of a wholesale cell phone switch. And darn it, all lost to text messages and communications on January 6, 2021, as the new vice president sat just a few feet away from the bomb. Of course, everybody else's phone was geofenced, but not theirs. There could have been an assassination, the likes of which the country had never seen since JFK was a risk. And the Secret Service won't tell the story. So the government is supposed to be public and we are supposed to be private, but that has been totally reversed. So the same geofencing capability that was used to track down J6ers to this day, that was somehow corrupted in Secret Service phones. The pipe bombs are mentioned only once on page 49 of the Inspector General's report. It is recorded no higher or equal value against the instigation of violence at the Capitol. Further, at approximately 1 p.m., Washington Field Office deployed to headquarters of both major national political parties after receiving reports of suspicious devices. Ultimately, law enforcement located 2 suspected pipe bombs at each of the parties' headquarters. A WFO SWAT team deployed to assist the USB in securing the Capitol. Reporter Darren Beatty calls the pipe bomb backstory the smoking gun of January 6th. It's all smoking guns all over the place. But is Pathetic Patel going to get to the bottom of this? No, not at all, because he is a talking head. That's all he is. And Trump saying he's doing a great job. Trump has been captured by this completely. So that begs the question then, with cartel wins and China wins going for Trump, because I think the cartel war and the tariff war, which is really against China, is doing pretty well, then how is the deep state war that could destroy him going? And of course, he seems to be completely captured. And I'm very critical of this. And I've said this many times, but I'm very open to other points of view. And something I thought I should consider is maybe Trump's triage is trickery as opposed to tragedy. And that is, maybe he has decided that the deep state is so infested in the government that he is going to go after that last. Now, I'm not saying he's doing this. I'm just saying this is another angle. Remember, I've said he has to fight 3 wars. He has to fight the cartel war. He has to fight the drug war. Well, the drug war is the cartel war. And he also has to go after China, which is the tariff war. And both of those, he seems to be doing a pretty good job. But he seems to be totally captured by the deep state. And Israel, of course, as well. But maybe he has just decided that he is going to go after the low-hanging fruit first. Certainly the cartels, and China, which together are running fentanyl, which is a bioweapon, are low-hanging fruit gives the federal government some credibility back, as opposed to running children, which they were doing. They can be fighting Chinese, they can be fighting pedos. Of course, they were doing it before. So maybe that's what he's doing. So I'm not sure if Trump's threat to triage is tragedy or trickery, but I thought I should be fair because I've been pretty critical of that. And I know a lot of listeners are very attached to Trump. And so we will see about that. But I've also got to mention that Erica Kirk's child organizations, nonprofit, is tied to a formal investigation into child trafficking in Romania. It has been dismissed. And this was involving Erica's parents, who are deeply embedded in the intelligence community and in Raytheon as well. For years, Ana Marie Nucia lived what looked like a normal life. She worked as a translator for a NATO military base in Conundrum, Romania, a quiet professional among military personnel. But Ana Marie wasn't just another translator. Her position gave her access to high-level circles, senior military officers, diplomatic envoys, even visits from U.S. officials like then Vice President Joe Biden. She was trusted, connected inside. And that's exactly what made what she discovered so explosive. Her office was right next to the base commander, Colonel Otto Buscher of the Black Sea Area Support Team. What happened was she saw children coming into the base. And Erica's parents, Kent and Melanie Franzeve, were prominent figures in the defense industry, having chaired Raytheon's Israel division and been involved in the significant military projects, including the Iron Dome. Melanie France's background is less publicly detailed, but the family has been noted for their connections to conservative and pro-Israel circles. Erica's upbringing in this environment, combined with her own public roles, has placed her at the center of discussions regarding influence in alleged covert operations. Anyway, Ana Marie filed child trafficking charges, again, this time with Romania's organized crime counteragency, and demanded that the Coglesnu file, that's the colonel's file, be connected to the infamous Caracel Devesu case where two teenage girls were abducted and allegedly killed. But because of a 2001 agreement between Romania and the United States, local authorities had no jurisdiction to investigate American soldiers. That's actually pretty standard all the time. The file was quietly closed. But once you understand that Erica's parents really were deeply embedded in the military-industrial complex with longstanding ties to Israel, the picture starts to change. Because how does a girl from Arizona end up running a child-focused nonprofit inside a NATO base in Romania? So Ana Marie claimed that the same trafficking networks were operating through the military NATO based. And Erica Kirk's close ties to this Romanian colonel, she has delineated. The mainstream media in the state of Israel are standing behind Erica Kirk and the TPSA, insisting they are innocent. But inside the ranks, patriots and whistleblowers are saying otherwise. Men and women who've worn the uniform, who've seen what happens behind the fences, are stepping forward to say the official story doesn't hold water. So sorry and sad to report that as well, but dutifully going to report to you the truth always. Further, there are still Secret Service trannies operating. So Hegseth has gotten rid of all the trans movement, at least supposedly, inside the military, but that has not happened inside the Secret Service. And of course, the Secret Service is, I make a lot of comparisons to the Praetorian Guard, to the Roman Praetorian Guard, how they controlled who got to be the next Caesar, the next emperor. And sometimes they killed the emperors. The Secret Service would be the closest to the Praetorian Guard because they are actually the closest to the president, the vice president, and senior figures. But despite Trump's very clear directive, reports show that the DEI Diversity, equity, inclusivity culture is still alive and well in the federal government, and especially so inside the Secret Service. Responding to anti-DEI executive order, Secret Service Director Curran shifted the agency's Office of Equity and Employer Support Services and its remaining employees back to its original mission of serving as the Equal Opportunity Employment Resolution Office before being rebranded and taking a swath of DEI initiatives under the Obama administration. But in 2023, several Secret Service agents went on an all-expense taxpayer-paid trip to the 2023 World LGBTQ Conference for Criminal Justice Professionals in Australia in 2023. That's a junket for sure. And action items include becoming a trans-inclusive agency, determining whether physical fitness standards were having a negative effect, which is ridiculous and absurd, using the Royal Canadian Mounted Police's comprehensive guide to support transgender. I used to work with the Mounties. That's sad to hear that as well. But the bottom line here is that where Hegseth has gotten rid of these in the military, Curran has not done that. There are still Secret Service trannies serving, and that's part of the reason why we see such corruption and incompetence going on still inside the Secret Service, and inside NSA as well. NSA whistleblower talks about everything started becoming about African Americans, veterans, pride, how to be a better ally, all of that as well. So let's see. Give me some of that, says sad, but consistent with what we're seeing there. Let me pull up my comments again. There we go. Erica just doesn't seem genuine to me, something very off. Her emotions were acting at the memorial, no autopsy, no investigation beyond leaked video, entire murder scene swept clean. Yeah, a lot of people were saying that. I didn't like saying that, but I'm coming to that conclusion as well. Although, you saw my guest on Tuesday who knew Erica, but, we shall see about that. But again, the good news is that the FBI, rather than, I think, scheduling yet another false flag bombing or something where they kill more innocent Americans, simply is releasing a little bit more video to keep the investigation open. And again, if you want to read my Substack on that, Jeffrey Prather Substack, some of them are free, some of them are paid. This one is paid. Also, go to sat123.com, sat123.com, and get your sat phone. You can get a 9555 for $95.95 a month. That's the best Iridium sat phone as well. Go on to the jeffreyprather.com shop. Get your Faraday bags to bag up, jeffreyprather.com shop. And I just published an interview where I just did a guest appearance with a guy who really likes my initiation book. And so you can get my initiation book and my chase book on my website there signed. I got some of those copies still if you want to get them signed, or you can just go to Amazon and pick up my book, Initiation, Boys Are Born, Men Are Trained, My Journey with Apache Medicine Man, and Chase, Terror on the Border, Fact-Based Fiction. And that interview that I did about my books yesterday is up as well. So also try and support the show, jeffreyprather.com locals, $9 a month, $9 a year, or patreon.com/jeffreyprather at the $5, $15, or $25 level. $25 level, you're training with me daily. I've got daily training videos, teaching classes. I just went to Tucson and taught Handgun Martial Arts Center Beginner Summit. Advanced resources at the $15 level, and then created new stories, everything at the $5 level that I'm always talking about. So want to get to my guest today. He was supposed to be on before, and there was a little confusion there. But Ira Chaleff is the author of How to Stop a Tyrant and also Followership. And I thought this was important because so many people are just upset when I'm criticizing Trump because I think they're afraid to really take more responsibility for themselves, and they just want Trump to be the answer to everything. And Trump is not the answer. We're the answer. God is the answer. Trump is just another fallen human being. But I wanted to get in that with my guest, and so welcome, Ira Chaleff.
Thank you, sir. Again, apologies for the miscommunication a couple of weeks ago. Glad to be here now.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to have you. Glad we made it happen. So thanks for sending me your book. And I got through it, most of it. Of course, that was a while back now. But you're also the author of several other books on followership. So please, just reel off those titles for me.
Yes, the first major book I wrote was called The Courageous Follower, Standing Up to and for Our Leaders. This is a really fundamental new way of thinking about the partnership between leading and following. It has been taught in most of the military academies, various law enforcement agencies, etc. Following that book, I wrote a book called Intelligent Disobedience, Doing Right when what you're told to do is wrong. And I want to say something to you about this personally. I noticed in one of your introductions that you cited with great admiration Rick Rescorla. And I use Rick Rescorla as a case example in my book, Intelligent Disobedience, because after he assessed the situation in the car bombing at the World Trade Center, he made great efforts to get Morgan Stanley to actually first to move from the Trade Center, and then when they wouldn't do that, to institute monthly safety drills, which he insisted on. And when after the first plane hit the first tower, he was given an order to have everybody stay in place in the second tower. And he intelligently disobeyed that order and got everyone out of that building. And as you said, quite correctly, he got everyone out except I think it was 3 people, maybe 2, and he went back in to look for them and died in the collapse of the tower. But his is a great story, and you're one of the only people I know who highlighted that story, which I use as an important example in my book. I don't think you knew that. I see you smiling.
No, I didn't, but I'm impressed. First, that you know who Rick is, and second, that you did your homework on me. But for those of you who don't know, Rick Rescorla was first a British paratrooper, and the paras are really tough. And then he became an American soldier, and he was actually in the Aratang Valley, which is memorialized in the book and movie We Were Soldiers Once and Young, and survived that battle, where they dropped right into that was the first battle in Vietnam of American soldiers against regular North Vietnamese army troops. The intelligence was terrible. They dropped right on a troop unit. And Mel Gibson made a great movie about Hal Moore's book. He had Colonel Hal Moore and the North Vietnamese general there as consultations. Rick then went on to Morgan Stanley, as Ira said, and noticed the base bombing in the World Trade Centers and said, well, the next one's going to be high. This one was low, and prepared everybody for that and got everybody out. And a lot of people don't know that the tower evacuated, and they started to go back in the tower as well. And he gave his life going back in to get more people. So that's impressive. Yes. And yeah, he's a very brave man. Very, very cool.
Yeah. And that book, Intelligent Disobedience, has also found its way into the military. In fact, I was invited to speak at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, on the topic of intelligent disobedience. And I asked the commandant, why do you want me talking to your troops about intelligent disobedience? And he said, we are always implementing new systems, new equipment, and none of it's perfect. And we need people to speak up when something isn't right. And so we can correct it in time. And they're too reluctant to speak up, and I need them to really understand the value of intelligent disobedience. And this is, people get surprised because the military is all about obedience. No, the military is about commander intent, and
Right.
making
That's
sure.
exactly right. Commander's
Exactly.
intent.
Exactly, and making sure that everybody understands commander intent, and they will do what is necessary to execute commander intent. And sometimes that involves um, disobeying orders which were based on information which is no longer current. So I've been very delighted on how the military has picked up on my work, and in fact, the British Army has issued for their military doctrine, their army doctrine, an addendum, a 30-page addendum on courageous followership. And I just couldn't be more proud of that, because these are very serious folks who are doing very serious mission. So those are my two prior books. And then the book we're going to probably talk most of the time about today is my most recent book, which is To Stop a Tyrant, The Power of Political Followers. My whole career, in one sense or another, has been based on how do followers help leaders achieve what they need to achieve, but also correct them when they have blind spots, which every good leader knows this is really crucial. But because of, human dynamics and culture and things like that, people often won't speak up when they should be speaking up. So my work is creating some new concepts, new language about how to do that more effectively than historically has been done.
Yeah, commander's intent, is very key with me with my volunteer organization, Team America. I talk a lot about that in our meetings, in our headquarters meetings, and I watched my Special Forces colonel when he was deploying Special Forces Operation Detachment A teams, ODAs, and he'd give them one-word mission statements that were carefully, beautifully crafted to tell them everything they were supposed to do and everything they couldn't do in one sentence. And you had to analyze those. And commander's intent is crucial. And there's tasks in there. There's implied tasks in there. There's an art to writing those, and there's an art to interpreting those. So yeah, that's really, really cool. And I know the Team America members listening will key on that. I'm so glad
Yeah,
you're so aware
if
of
I
that.
if I can, let me tell you one kind of humorous story, but it's very very serious, that I cover in intelligent disobedience. When I was giving a lecture on courageous followership, and I think this was for the DNI, um, an officer came up to me after my talk, and he told me this story, and he said. He had been a young lieutenant who had reported every morning to his captain, and the captain, was the kind of martinet who said, "These are your 10 things to do today. If you think there's something more important, you get my first get my 10 things done, and then you can do yours." And he would say, "Yes, sir," and he would leave for the day. New captain rotated in, and he said, he gave the lieutenant an order, and the lieutenant said, "Yes, sir," and he went to execute it. And the captain said, "Hold on a minute. Did what I tell you make sense?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Did it really make sense?" And he said, "Well, sir, not fully, because of this and this and that." And the captain said, "We got to get this straight. If I give you an order that doesn't make sense, you have got to tell me that and tell me why." And the guy says, "Yes, sir." And he says, "No, no, that's not good enough. We're going to drill it right now. I'm going to give you an order, and you're going to tell me that's BS, sir. And he says, I can't do that. He said, you're going to do it. And so he gave him an order, and the guy said, I had to whisper it. I said, sir, that's BS. He said, okay, come on, do it again, until he could say, sir, that's BS. He said, okay, fine. Now we've got the agreement. A few weeks go by. The captain's, he comes to report to the captain. The colonel is in the captain's office. And the colonel had a nephew on base who had misappropriated a military vehicle. And the colonel was trying to get the captain to make this go away. So the captain says to the lieutenant, what's happening, what they're trying to do. And the lieutenant says, sir, that's BS. And the colonel says, what did he say to you? And the captain says, it's okay, sir, I'll take care of it. And he puts his arm around the lieutenant and walks him out of the room. He says, you did great. Now get out of here before he kills you. But the serious point here is you need to drill this in as seriously as you drill in any protocol, because people don't naturally have the gumption to say it like it is. You find that all the time because you have that gumption.
Well, one thing with intelligence disobedience, one theme that I'm really pushing, as a former federal special agent, is under Pedo Joe, as I call him, Biden, the government really ran children. So Tara Rhodes, I've had Tara Rhodes, HHS whistleblower, on. She has said that. I have assessed that. Many agents, ICE and Border Patrol, have assessed that. And there has been no confession of that, or no declaration of asking pardon for that. They've just gone to, okay, we were running kids, now we are deporting. And I don't think that's good enough. So I always come from a moral foundation, a national ethical foundation. Our ethics are based upon our morals are based upon our American exceptionalism of life and freedom. And that's, I think, based upon our 10 Mosaic laws, 2 Christic laws, 2 indigenous laws. But I wanted to get your opinion on that too, because if somebody else comes in and says, hey, we're going to run kids again, they're just going to do the same thing again. When this stuff has happened before, like with Germany had to renounce Nazism. The Japanese had to renounce warfare. But that doesn't seem to have happened at all. So I want to see if you have any input on that, because I didn't see hardly any. I know a couple of heroes who resigned and who would not do that. But what do you say about all that?
Yeah, I really don't have enough information to speak to that incident, but you're absolutely correct. What if we go back to the very famous Stanley Milgram experiments, where people thought that they were administering shocks because authority told them to do so, and they went up to 450 volts, even though they thought they might be killing the person, and 2 out of 3 people obeyed all the way to 450 volts. And those who didn't do, I'm always interested in those who didn't obey, right? And one of the things that you find is that they were almost always answering to a higher authority.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's the principle there, and we all have to carry that with us, no matter where we are in life and where we are in the chain of command, that there's a higher authority. And yes, it takes this is why my book is called The Courageous Follower, because you can't do this stuff without courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is what you do in the face of fear. And so when I do my workshops, we do a lot of work on fear and what is your source of courage? And everyone has different sources of courage, I found, which is very, very interesting. But you have to know your source of courage and the ground on which you stand when you're faced with something that you really shouldn't do, but you're told to do. And often it happens very quickly, and you don't have time to think or get counsel from someone else. It has to be internal. You have to have that capacity to respond and sort of slow the motion down as you would in martial arts, and recover your own sense of agency and speak truth from the higher authority that you answer to.
Well, that's all very true. And you're talking about a transcendent authority. And I think that's part of the reason why, because I've had on other authors who are very successful in mainstream stuff, such as you are. But I'm pretty much banned by the mainstream because I'm too blunt at this point. But to get to, for those who are answering to a higher authority than simply the government authority, where you're trying to instill this through your lectures and through your books, that won't instill a transcendent authority. So I want to know, and I always ask this of everybody, is, what is your basis for that transcendent authority? For me, again, as a Christian, it's a follower of Christ. It's the 2 Christic commandments, book stopped by the 10 Mosaic commandments and the 2 indigenous commandments. And that's really something I just don't see a way around, because that's without that moral character. So John Adams says, we can only have a republic if we have a virtuous populace. And this is where I think our virtues come from. But I didn't really see that addressed. Maybe I missed it in your work. It was, I thought, generalized, but I'd like you to get more specific about that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I certainly don't address that directly in To Stop a Tyrant. And maybe, that's an error. That's an omission. I was working in To Stop a Tyrant, trying to, I think, keep it at a maybe more practical level. And that's all I can say, is that, because what I found in my work, I found that each individual held a different source of their courage. For many, it was their religious faith, but it was very, very varied. For example, some would say, well, it was my aunt so-and-so who emigrated with no money, and she was a child and didn't speak the language, and she had the courage to do it and become an American citizen and raise a family on her own, with no money, but just hard work. That's my source of courage. Another one would say, well, I read history, and I found that Nelson Mandela was my hero and my source of courage. And so I don't want to be presuming to tell people where that higher authority lies for them, but rather to tell them they need to make sure they connect with that higher authority that they carry from their tradition and in their soul.
No, I like that answer. I think it's very valid. And I don't think and I also like your humility, because that's something I try and practice, is saying, well, maybe that's an error, but, I will respond to that. I don't think it's an error, because I think if you got as specific as I do, you would not be invited into the circles that I am not invited into. And therefore they would not get the concepts introduced to them.
You're raising a really important point here. Okay, let's get to Stop a Tyrant. When people heard I was writing this, first of all, the people on the left just assumed I was writing about Trump, and the people on the right assumed I was writing about Biden and the deep state, which is very, very interesting. And they would say to me, boy, is that timely? And I'd say, boy, you're right. Is that timely? And guess what? It has been timely throughout human history and on every continent. um, this I did not write this book about this administration, and I also didn't want it to be dated when, as all things pass, this administration will pass as well. And I want this book to stay relevant because I'm trying to, in my own way, contribute to how do we find the solution to what seems endemic in the human condition, to one way or another allowing leaders who become tyrannical to rise and hold sway for whatever period they do. Fortunately, most actually wind up being deposed one way or another within about 10 or 12 years, but some last for 40 years. And some even then get succeeded by another tyrant.
But
So
tyrants always fall and tyranny always fails.
yes, and with at great damage being done in the interim. So what I'm looking at here is the I'm taking the telescope and turning it around. I'm saying I'm not looking at the leader. We can look at the leader till kingdom come, and the leader's not going to pay any attention to us. They're going to do what they do. But the leader would not be a leader if they had no followers. You cannot
Exactly.
lead if you have no followers.
No, that's what I found so interesting about your work and so fascinating about your work. Now, I would disagree with that, though. I don't think Biden cared, but I do think Trump cares. I think Trump is very conscious of public opinion and is malleable by that response, where I don't think Biden cares. Gandhi said that he would never have done ahimsa, enlightened nonviolence, against the Nazis. He did it against the British because they still had a moral code. The Nazis, he said, that would never have worked because they just said, great, that would have worked. That would, Gandhi was not nonviolent. He was a warrior. He was just using the correct technique for the conflict.
You're absolutely right. And far too few people make that distinction about Gandhi. They go, well, why can't you just do it like Gandhi? So there is a principle in the subject of leadership which is not well understood. There are three things always at work: the leader, the followers, and the context. And you just pointed out the context. If the context was the British Empire or the context was the Third Reich, those are very different systems in which you make choices as a follower and as a leader. And we always have to keep those three in mind. Now, here's where I make people somewhat uncomfortable. Those people on the left, they believe they know what's right and what's evil. And those people on the right know they believe what's right and what's evil. And I could sell a lot of books if I just affiliated with one or the other and trash the other side. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is looking at the underlying principles that history is full of tyrants on the left and the right. And I'm looking at the underlying principles of how we, as followers, allow that to happen.
That's the key statement right there. That's very important.
And how might we do it differently? So you've got it. I mean, you've got the essence of what I'm trying to do. And I'm doing it very intentionally, almost pristinely nonpartisan, because I believe that all of us on both sides of the political aisle need to take this very seriously, because otherwise what happens is this: we put all of our eggs in one basket or the other, and we believe this leader or that leader is going to solve all our problems, and we give them enough power so that they can do what they need to do, and then power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, And we find that the leader is now no longer doing what we thought we supported them in doing. And history is strewn with people who've been betrayed. They gave their life, their blood, their treasure to supporting a leader who then turns around and jails them, or kills them, throws them off balconies, or puts them into a jail to rot for the rest of their lives. I don't want to see anyone um, feel that they have been betrayed by who they put their faith into. Faith with a small f, not faith with a big F. And that's what this book is about. It's to say, look, whoever you support, whoever you think is the good guy or the bad guy, take a real look at some of these principles.
Well, I don't know if you can get away from the faith with a big F. I'm not sure, and this is something that I want to ask you about, because your work seemed to be very academic in that regard, and this is again how I think you're acceptable in these conventional institutions. But that may not necessarily work, because, for example, you said your work would be it's timely down through the ages, which is correct. I agree with you, but that connotes a particular point of view, because on the left, if you look at human secularism, whether it's the French Revolution or where it's the Epstein-sponsored institutes that you can direct human evolution, that is that there's really no God, and we can act as gods, as opposed to what is truth. Because why is your work relevant in any generation? It's because of our fallen human nature. And this is why the founders divided up the power of government, because they knew what would happen. They had studied human history, and they chose a republic, not a democracy. Everybody who says that is wrong. They hated democracy. That's mob rule. And so they understood the fallen human nature. But if you say that, then that immediately excludes you from the left, who believe in directed human evolution and human secularism. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, first, let me gently correct you on something. I'm not an academic. I don't have any advanced degrees whatsoever. I have a bachelor's degree. Um, and I don't see academics write their books um, sort of descriptively. They describe what's happened. Frankly, I'm prescriptive. All of my books are prescriptive. They're written to say, here's how you could think about things, how you could step back, take a look at yourself, how you make conclusions about reality, what you could do differently, etc. And at least half of the people who have told me how much our work means to me are people of faith. But I don't need to tell people of faith
Right.
that they need
You need the other side to.
and I don't want to. I guess I'm a bridge. That's the best I can say. I'm a bridge between people on all parts of the spectrum, and what I'm asking them to do is, if they don't have a concept of God, they certainly can have a concept of core human values, which are so similar to the Ten Commandments anyway, that I'm trying to create something that doesn't present itself as a roadblock to saying, oh, no, I can't listen to what this guy is saying because he's demanding I have this cosmology or that cosmology. No, I'm saying, bless you for however you have arrived where you are now.
But I'm not sure you can do that. I'm not sure you can separate mosaic.
But I do this. And whether or not, again, as you say, whether or not I'm right, I'm certainly not always effective. But the stance I take is that each human being is doing the best they can. Some have gotten better moral guidance than others. Some have to stumble through life and hopefully find that moral guidance. Some never do find that moral guidance. But nevertheless, these are all the people that support the political leaders in one way or another that we get. And I'm trying to reach them in a way that they can say, I see myself here. Now, here's what I can do. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't go further and look more deeply at their spiritual foundations and develop those, but that's not what this book is doing.
No, that's fair. And I think I said your work is academic, but I will accept the correction that it is prescriptive rather than descriptive and therefore not academic. That makes sense as well. But again, I'm not sure you answered my my observation that when you say your work, and I agree with it, is relevant all down through all generations, that then defines you as understanding human nature and coming from, it sounds like a Christic point of view, fallen human nature, as opposed to a human secularist, because all the human secularist movements, again, whether it's the French Revolution, whether it was the Mexican Revolution, where they think they can fix this on their own and there doesn't need to be any higher moral authority beyond ourselves, outside ourselves, doesn't work. You can't have a standard, a moral standard, without defining a moral standard. There has to be a defining of that. And if you look at Western civilization, and especially if you look at American government, that is defined, I argue, by Mosaic law and Christic commandments, and woven in there subtly are the two indigenous commandments: never harm children, everything is born of a woman. So I'll let you respond again to that.
I love that you're expanding it to include the indigenous precepts there. I'm not sure how to stand in the face of what you're saying with authenticity. The
Wow,
see,
I'll take that as a compliment.
I believe that whatever you believe the source of your existence is, that you, and I know not everyone will agree with this, that you have been given free will, and that it's therefore your responsibility to figure out how to use that free will in the service of life that you have been given. That's the best I can state it, Jeffrey.
So the Presbyterian dispensationalists just got mad at you.
Right? I know that. So let's see if we can examine a little bit more the way I approach this in To Stop a Tyrant. Okay, you okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So you invited me to use some slides if I wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Okay. So let me put up a couple of slides here to do that. Oh, I have to first make myself a presenter, right? Present. Okay.
Yeah, then I'll see it, then I'll be able to put it up.
Okay. And then I'm going to put up this slide. I'm going to start with this one. Can you see that?
Not yet, no.
Do you have to put it up?
Yeah, I have to put it up, but I don't see it. I should see it in a separate window.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So
well,
you should see it in present. But there's a comment here: facts, logic, and reason do not exist in a vacuum. One of the biggest lies perpetrated by the Alcoholics Anonymous and the mental health industry is your parents, moms did the best they could with what they had. Did they? Did she? Sometimes no. I don't know about that. May be the mental health. AA all is about a higher authority, and it is however you perceive a higher authority, which I think is a great way to look at it, a very practical, proven way to look at it. However you perceive God, or however you perceive a higher authority, but you aren't going to be able to do this alone, and
I agree with
we can't just
I
measure our own standards.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Now, um, inevitably, when anyone writes a book, they have to decide what they're not writing about.
Right.
So, for example, I'm actually not writing a book about tyranny. I'm writing a book about tyrants. What's the difference? Tyranny can be embedded in a system, you
Right.
see, whereas a tyrant is an individual. Let me talk about that for a moment, because our founding fathers had studied Rome, they studied Greece, and other systems, and they knew, and this is where your uh, clarification about democracy is relevant. They knew that some form of democracy almost always ends in tyranny, which is, a really, really challenging observation. So, what I've done is I've looked at that there's a progression, however one ascends to political leadership, and you can do it through the standard ways of doing it in your culture, or you can do it by um, co-opting or a coup, but somehow or other you have gotten the power of the state. Now, you can then use it, no matter how you got it, you may start using it beneficially, but too often, because of human, we can say, the fallen state of humans, that inevitably, almost inevitably, abuse starts to come into the system. And once abuse comes into the system, there's a tendency to become self-protective, and you do that by consolidating power around you. And if you consolidate power enough, you become dictatorial. And if you become dictatorial enough, you become tyrannical. One of the things I learned in writing this book is a distinction between a dictator and a tyrant, which I didn't know before, and most people don't. And in Rome,
Yep, that's right.
as you know, but I'm going to say it, for your listeners. In Rome, uh, a dictator was a post conferred on an individual in a state of extremity by the Senate, and it was for a limited time period, typically 6 months. If they needed another 6 months, okay, but it was limited to handle an extreme uh, danger from outside or inside the republic. Now, the problem became when some dictators didn't want to give up the power, they then become a tyrant. And what's the difference? A dictator is making all of their unitary actions, they make the decision, but they're doing it in service of the national mission. Whereas a tyrant is just making arbitrary decisions for themselves, their friends, their family. They tend to be cruel, they tend to be oppressive, and nobody is safe any longer. Not their closest allies aren't safe. And I give, numerous examples of this in the book, how people very close to the tyrant were then murdered in all kinds of horrible ways. So, what do we do about this? What the analogy I use is a fire. If a fire is small, you can stop it with a bucket of water or a bucket of sand, depending what kind of fire it is. If the fire gets out of control, all you can do is run for your life and then set up fire breaks to try to keep it from spreading further. What we want to do, and it's very, very similar with the progression from strong leadership to tyrannical leadership. So we have to identify the window of opportunity that still exists when there are enough freedoms left to check the tyrant. Now, I'm not saying to remove the tyrant, because so often what happens in history is when you remove the tyrant, you get a worse tyrant or you get chaos, which has even more detrimental effect. But I'm saying that each of the different parties, each of the different smaller power centers have to work together to put sufficient checks on that leader so that they use their charisma, their power to do what is needed, because they didn't get there because nothing was needed. There are things that the Republic really needed, but they don't use it wantonly and destructively. And now it's easy for me to say that. This is extremely difficult to do. But that's what I try to take apart in my book. How, wherever you are in the political system, what might you be able to do to check this before it becomes a raging fire that's just going to consume everything in its path?
No, and I think I think that is particularly relevant. So just to answer some of the comments, life, why some humans are irreparable and unfixable. Well, I'm a Christian, so I don't believe that. Tiny tyrants get no pass. I think you're referring to petty tyrants. We wait for justice. Revenge is the Lord's, is what I'd say to you. And if you are a Christian, then I think you need to go look at Scripture again, because you're not really understanding it that well. But your points are very well taken. But I think it's particularly relevant right now because, like I said, I don't think Biden cared at all. He'd fondle kids on TV and whatever, but Trump cares. Trump is malleable. And I don't think people are happy now because he's done a lot of things that we did not want to do, going into Gaza, bombing Iran. I think there's a lot of influence and control by Bibi Netanyahu in Israel and Mossad that nobody wanted, but that he reacts to that. Like the Epstein list, first is, hey, it's going to come out, then it's, we're coming out, then it's, well, there is no list. The cover up continues. So let's go into that. Do you, first of all, do you agree with me that Biden didn't care? Well, Biden really wasn't in charge anyway. He had his handlers, but Trump does care. Do you agree with me on those?
I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to spend time disagreeing with you because, again, my purpose in writing this book is not to call out Biden or to call out Trump. It's to look at us and to say, if I see Biden doing this or if I see Trump doing that, what am I going to do about it? What is my work? What am I called to do?
Well, that's good. That's great. But that goes back to my point again about there was no government-wide call for a confession. So as a Christian, I emulate Yeshua's protocols, which is when I screw up, I confess. Sometimes I confess on air where they were running kids. There's no confession. There's no offer of forgiveness there. It's just, well, we were running kids. Now we're not running kids. Now we're deporting folks, but we could run kids again. There's no moral structure. See, I'm circling back to this. You've got to have a defined moral structure, which I think is Mosaic, Christic, and indigenous. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Now, with the people you've interviewed, they may talk about a relative that inspired them. That's fine. But then I would look at, well, what was that relative's? Where did that relative's moral courage?
That's a very good point.
If you go to the base of it, because I interview a lot of soldiers, I interview a lot of heroes, and I have to kind of dig down because these guys aren't talkers; these are doers. But if you dig down underneath, there was an underlying faith with a capital F that got them through whatever the hard stuff was.
I like that. Again, I'm not going to start to pretend that I've written the book you would prefer.
No, I'm just getting to the
what we
point.
have to look at,
You
what we have to look at is
you
what.
clearly have a personal moral code.
Yes.
You clearly are answerable to a higher transcendent power.
Yes.
Normally, I'd ask you about that. I ask all my guests about their
Yes.
faith, but I'm
Yes.
pretty sure you're not going to answer.
Well, there's no doubt that I feel that all of my work is in service to a higher power, and I am intensely grateful that I have been allowed to do the work that I've done in this life, and that it has reached as many people as it has reached. I express my gratitude in my own way every day. I cannot tell. I am going to celebrate my 80th birthday in 2 weeks, and this is a time for reflection and gratitude, because nothing in life was a certainty for me. There were so many pitfalls and so many times that my life could have been ended or could have, gone down a really dark path or whatever. So I know that I've been supported in my work. And so
Beyond yourself. So
beyond myself. So
would you go so far as to say providence?
I think providence can mean so many things to different people.
Well, I'm talking about George Washington, divine providence. That's how he was always under the guidance of providence.
I think so. I do think so. Even though if we were sitting down over I don't know what that's a bottle of
well, that is from the hero. That's from retired Sergeant Major Vince McKellar, one of the horse soldiers who overthrew the Taliban government. He's been on the show. And again, that special forces team would read scripture with each other when they were together. And when they were working with the Taliban, they said, hey, well, we're men of faith too. We're Christian, but because not the Taliban, the Mujahideen were men of faith too, they actually were better able to build rapport. Of course, the rapport began with the beard. That's why they grew the beards initially, to build rapport. But also there was
I should have done that before I got on your show.
No, you're doing fine. No, it's a very stimulating conversation, and I'm actually glad I'm making you think about some.
Very good. Stuff. So, because people don't have endless bandwidth to listen to us go on for as long as we might, what I'm hoping people do is that they get enough curiosity to either get the book or get the audio book, and listen to it and just make up for their own minds as to is anything they're hearing of value to them that calls them to act in a way at this moment in history that could have a beneficial effect on our near and long-term future. That's all that my book is offering.
No, I totally agree with that, and I thank you for coming on. And I won't keep you any longer. I know you only like to do about. I only like to do about an hour or two, so I'm right there with you. But thank you so much for coming on, Ira. I've greatly enjoyed talking to you. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Thanks for a great conversation, and again for forgiving me for missing your show.
See,
there's an act. There's an act of Christian forgiveness, right?
There you go. Thanks for noticing
All
that.
Right. You take care.
God bless. Okay, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I was supposed to be on before. He missed it, and he called me up and left me a message, and I called him back and said, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. He said, hey, you're a gentleman. Very, very interesting, very informative. But I do think we can pressure and push Trump. And that's why I think Ira's work is so relevant to what's going on now. So remember, a secret told isn't. No communications are secure. All security is breachable. All codes are hackable. Concealment is not cover. All cover is temporary. All codes are breakable. Use a one-time pad at one time. Looking is not seeing. Hearing is not listening. Moving is not action. Knowledge is not wisdom. Perseverance beats talent. Power is not force. Hope is not a plan. Plans are useless. Planning is invaluable. Develop the situation before it develops you. Training is essential. The most committed wins. Freedom is never given. It is earned, won, fought for, and taken. So take it.